Hi, everybody. It's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. Monday morning, Cleveland Browns losing another heartbreaker. 59-yard field goal, 60-yard field goal. Loses it in the fourth overtime game the Browns have played in this season. Oh, man, it's another moral victory. The Cleveland Browns with another moral victory. They were down big. They made the big comeback. They tied it. They send it to overtime. Jarvis Landry makes a beautiful catch and stretch to score the touchdown. I'm kidding. It's, in any other time, any other year, we might be trying to call it a moral victory, but in this day and age, moral victories no longer work. Let's talk about this game. There's a lot to talk about. First of all, I wanted Nick Chubb to play more. You wanted Nick Chubb to play more. Everybody wanted Nick Chubb to play more. Trading Carlos Hyde on a Friday after a week of practice, basically the just hours, maybe 12 hours before the team gets on the plane to go to Tampa to play a professional football game, is not the right message for a front office to send to a locker room or a roster that is about to go and try and win a game that they might be able to win. You can say it was a good trade. You can say it was the right move. You can say anything that you want, but the process matters. When you're in a baseball season and you're approaching the trade deadline and you've got a contender making a trade, even a trade for a guy that might or might not make that big of a difference, sends a message to your locker room. Trading a starter on a Friday before heading off, even if the guy shouldn't have been a starter, trading a starter heading into a Friday right before traveling to play a game sends a message to your locker room. Okay? You can debate whether it was a good trade or whether Nick Chubb deserved to play and whatever else. There's an impact of making that trade on a Friday, and the impact was seen on Twitter with the reactions from Demarius Randall and others who were basically like, WTF. It's weird. It's a weird thing. Yes, Jacksonville made the call to try and acquire Carlos Hyde, and the Browns listened, but it's weird. It's weird. And it's not the best vibe to send your team off to play a game on Sunday. You can't deny that. You just can't. I don't think anybody who's being reasonable can deny that. Everybody was looking to say what a brilliant trade it was on Friday afternoon and into Saturday because the Browns got a 5th round pick. I don't have any delusions that Carlos Hyde is worth more than a 5th round pick on that contract. He's a starter. He's a starter caliber player. But I don't have any delusions that he's worth any more than what he's actually worth. I get it. I know. I'm here. I understand. But to trade him on a Friday for a 5th round pick, I don't care about Jimmy Haslam's money. I don't care about a 2019 5th round pick. I care about the Cleveland Browns playing the regular season right now. I care about Baker Mayfield developing. And so if they use this 5th round pick to trade it for a wide receiver that can be used this season, I might change my tune. But until that time, the Browns traded a starter on a Friday before a game. That's what they did. I'm not saying it was the difference in the game. Nick Chubb had a very fine game. He averaged 4.4 yards against the Buccaneers. He had a couple big runs in the fourth quarter. A very good showing by the rookie, which is what we all wanted to see. I just don't understand why you couldn't play Nick Chubb without trading Carlos Hyde. This was the one spot on the team where they had depth. And I'm sorry, Duke Johnson is a really nice weapon. He doesn't really count as depth at running back the same way Carlos Hyde does, because he's not the same guy. You don't just line him up and hand him the ball, or at least the Browns don't. Maybe they should, but they don't. So he's not pure running back depth. He's like that third down back in the weapon. So the Browns went from having lots of depth at a position and a position on the offense where they need help because the receivers are so woeful due to injury and whatever else. And they just go and they just willy-nilly trade Carlos Hyde. Just get rid of him. But anyway, that's not necessarily the story of the day, thankfully, because Nick Chubb did play well. So that doesn't justify the trade. That doesn't justify the process of trading this guy. Again, Carlos Hyde for a fifth in a vacuum, fine. Trading him on a Friday before a winnable football game, I'm not necessarily on board with that. I don't think it's an overwhelming haul where you're going, oh yeah, you had no choice but to make that trade. No choice. It's a fifth. Fifth is nice, but it's not an overpay. It's a pay. It's not an overpay. Okay, so now we've got, let's talk about referees again. Not the difference in the game. The Browns had every chance to win. They went 3 and out twice in overtime. So the Browns are their own worst enemy. But the referees in the NFL are undeniably a problem. The fact that they picked up a flag when Baker Mayfield takes a headshot when he was giving himself up, just all these different factors, and then the referee on the mic says that it's legal for Baker Mayfield to be hit in the head because he was a runner? Never mind that the defender led with the crown of his helmet lowered. It was not heads-up football. It wasn't proper form tackling. He used his helmet as a weapon and hit Baker in the ear hole of his helmet. How, why, what? I don't even understand any explanation that anybody could possibly make that that's okay. None. And I'm basically I'm making an argument where there's no counter argument. It's kind of a waste of time. And I'm sure everyone's going, okay, Craig, enough, Craig, we agree. Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees except apparently the NFL referee who blathered into a microphone his utter stupidity. So I was hoping to break the streak of Monday morning apologies from the NFL on behalf of their referees. But I don't think I'm just being a homer at this point when I say the Browns are more than on the short end of the stick when it comes to NFL flags. There was a block in the back on a running play or a screen pass that just blows me away. The Browns defender, he was kind of blocking in the back technically, but he put his hands in the air like he was setting a pick. And if that's a block in the back, so help me. I don't think anybody needs to see a deep dive into every single flag a team gets in a certain game, because there are bad flags all over the place. But the rate with which the flag was being thrown against both teams on Sunday, and especially the calls that they were making on the Browns, at a certain point you have to let them play football. Okay? And the one time they did let him play football, it was when a dude put the crown of his helmet in the ear hole of Baker Mayfield's helmet. I just, if I was a 17-year-old girl on Twitter, I would say, I can't even. But that's pretty much where we are. That's pretty much where we are right now. All right, let's get to another one. Let's get to Hue Jackson. First of all, I'm done defending Hue Jackson. If Hue Jackson is a ceiling on this team. He will never be a competitive advantage for the Cleveland Browns. So at some point, if the Browns want to replace Hue Jackson, that's fine. Much like trading Carlos Hyde, though, I'm interested in the process. So let's talk about the process. We are no longer debating whether or not the Browns should or should not keep Hue Jackson. whatever they decide is fine. It's a matter of when, not if. Okay? Hue Jackson is, at best, in perfect circumstances with a great roster, a 9, 7, 8, 10 win coach. Okay? That's with everything going right. That's Marvin Lewis level coaching. And with that level of coach available and Jimmy Haslam's money, Hue Jackson is never going to be good enough to keep you from looking for the replacement. So I'm here with you. I've come to grips with it. That said, changing head coaches in the middle of a season is still not good process to me. There are way too many games to go unless there is some other intervening factor. I would not fire Hue Jackson at this point. 2, 3, 4 games when it's now a hindrance to your search for the next head coach and you want to get an early jump on the search, okay, I'll listen. But to sit here and talk about firing Hue Jackson to promote Todd Haley right now doesn't make any sense unless there's some other intervening factor, unless they're going to start fighting. The coordinators and head coach are going to be fighting. Which brings me to the after-game commentary by Hue Jackson, where he was asked about the offense. I think Cleveland media, who I respect, I'm not bashing them. I wasn't there. I wasn't covering the game. I didn't ask the questions, but the number of conclusions that they draw from Hue Jackson's answers to these questions, a line of questioning that Cleveland media pursued over and over and over again with follow-up after follow-up after follow-up, is a little bit ridiculous. Hue Jackson needs to be smarter than to say the things that he said about getting involved in the offense and not precluding play calling and everything else. But make no mistake, these were questions being pursued by the media members who are now writing about the answers to the questions. They were the ones digging in and asking and asking and asking and asking and saying, well, what about play calling? And what about this? What about that? Hue Jackson was trying to say, and he did say, that he would respect his coordinator, but that he was the head coach and he was going to dig in, and he felt like he could help a little bit. And that's what he was saying. And they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing until he kind of dug himself a hole. And that's on Hue. Part of the reason why I'm not willing to make an argument that he shouldn't be eventually replaced. But it's a storyline. It's not reality. I don't think Hue Jackson really fired a shot across the bow of Todd Haley on Sunday. And that's kind of what ended up being painted. And I think it was largely a creation of the media and their questions. Again, I'm not bashing the media, and Hue Jackson needs to be smarter. He takes responsibility for the things that come out of his mouth, but that's really truly what I think happened. So yeah, Hue Jackson is eventually going to be an impediment to this team. He's never going to be a competitive advantage. He's going to have to go at some point. I was hoping beyond hope that Hue Jackson, just being that kind of CEO motivator and getting out of the way and letting the coordinators work, would work out just fine. It's the way that Hue Jackson always should have been structured. The Hue Jackson coaching staff always should have been structured. But so I'm done with the debate. We don't have to debate any more than we have to talk about Sashi Brown anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. So assuming he's going to be replaced at some point, I'm done talking about that. This idea that everybody's going to get their bloodletting this week or next week, it just doesn't make any sense. I guess maybe you could talk me into something where it makes sense to do it over the bye week because there's some extra time to prepare. But I'm not sure what you really accomplish. Part of the problem with Hue Jackson in his first 2 seasons was that he was the head coach and the coordinator. So if you fire Hue Jackson, you elevate Todd Haley or somebody else, or Greg Williams. I don't think they'd elevate Greg Williams, but elevating one of the main coordinators, how does that make sense? That's the same exact thing that we already recognized was a problem when Hue Jackson was doing it by himself the first 2 years as the offensive coordinator / head coach. So why would we do that? Doesn't make any sense. But it also doesn't make sense that we're in this situation where we're trying to fire Hue Jackson after he was just brought back by Jimmy Haslam. Like, although then again, there hasn't been a better time to search for a head coach maybe in the modern history of the Cleveland Browns. All of a sudden, you've got Hue Jackson, who nobody can argue didn't get a fair shake. He got his 3rd season, so the coaching community should appreciate that. Additionally, the Browns have identified a quarterback that pretty much, I think, any head coach in the league would be excited to come and work with. And part of the reason that the Browns' job has been so unattractive over the years is that they had nothing. They didn't have a roster. They didn't have a quarterback. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. When you've got that quarterback, the losses don't feel so bad. Or when you've got a quarterback that you think is a reasonable prospect, the losses don't feel quite as bad. And the job all of a sudden looks that much more attractive. I'm not sure who the candidates are. And I really don't want to get into it. Obviously names like John DeFilippo in Minnesota and Lincoln Riley in college and all these different names will pop up. But any more than I can tell you who the best draft prospect is in the NFL draft, I can't tell you anything about these coaching prospects either. It's above my pay grade, so I'll stay out of it. But the idea is that whoever the top 3, 4, 5 coaching candidates are, all of a sudden the Browns' job should look far more attractive than it ever has because of Baker Mayfield. That's the idea. So if you were going to fire Hue, firing him at the end of last season before Baker Mayfield was anything of a known quantity, before John Dorsey and Elliott Wolf and this front office had a chance to establish any kind of track record of building a roster and what their MO was going to be in terms of free agency and draft. Now those things are in place. The Browns have a quarterback. They have a front office. This is probably the most advantageous moment the Browns have had since '99 to bring in a head coach. So that, for that reason and many others, I'm no longer arguing to keep Hue Jackson for stability or anything else. Stability now rides with John Dorsey and with Baker Mayfield. That's the idea. And Nick Chubb and Jarvis Landry, who's going to be here for the next 3 years after this season, I believe, if he gets the full extent of his contract. The Browns have a lot of work to do. They need to improve. I'm hoping John Dorsey follows up that Carlos Hyde trade with a move to actually bring some talent in. Because I think regardless of whether they fire Hue Jackson in the middle of the year or not, he can do the opposite of the message he sent when he traded Carlos Hyde by bringing some talent in. Send that message to the locker room that he believes in their chance to win a few more games this season. That he's not just punting on this season to go for a higher draft pick. He's not going full draft pick, tank for draft pick the rest of the season. He's not satisfied with 2 wins and a tie. And that's what I'm hoping to see. So the Browns have a really ugly road ahead of them. They played the Steelers. They played the Chiefs. They have the Falcons after that. This Browns team is a professional football team now. They're capable of winning any game at any time, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a predictor that's going to say the Browns are going to beat the Steelers this Sunday in Pittsburgh. It's possible. Anything's possible. It's just so unlikely. Is it a 5% chance? Is it a 6 or a 7% chance? I don't know. But they're going to be touchdown or more underdog this weekend against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, and they should be. So we'll see. Maybe John Dorsey makes a move early in the week that enables the team to come in with some positive mental vibes, positive mental attitude heading into Pittsburgh, but it seems very unlikely. So could be a rough couple of weeks, could be a rough 3 weeks. I think it's 3 weeks until the bye. And if it's a rough 3 weeks into the bye, maybe they will finally pull the trigger and just relieve Hue Jackson of his duties. Maybe they sit down and talk to him about his comments, and it'll implode sooner rather than later. Anything's possible. We don't know. Just like Hard Knocks taught us, we don't know what's going on inside the walls of Berea when the rubber meets the road and Jimmy Haslam sits down and he talks to John Dorsey and Hue Jackson. Long gone are those group hugs that were caught on camera in HBO when Hue Jackson was mourning the loss of his mother. It's business time now, and we'll see what transpires. Thanks so much for listening. It been a slow couple of weeks for me. I'm going to try to get back on board. I tried to get in with Ben Axelrod last week. It didn't happen. I tried to get in with Nomina last week. It didn't happen, but the Cavs have started. The Browns are interesting. Baseball is dead to me until next year. But we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.